Good morning and welcome. We are live and recording. Welcome to how to avoid burnout in the workplace. Firstly, as I say, welcome to those of you that are attending for the first time, and welcome back to those of you that have become regular attendees at these webinars. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Julie Allen of Julie Allen Consulting, and I will tell you a little bit about myself later on. I see we have a few people live with us on screen. We have a number who have registered. One of the things about using this platform is, I said at the start, we're live and recording. Crowdcast will record and instantly make the webinar available as soon as it is complete. So there will be people watching this as a recording. So let's get started. I'm just going to do a little bit of screen sharing for those of you who have attended these webinars before. You'll probably know the drill. So I am now, you'll see on your screen, I am sharing my slides. I haven't forgotten that I'm not in presenter mode on PowerPoint, and that is because I will be editing my screen as I move through the session. First of all, I suppose before we get started, while I'm explaining some things, just the housekeeping, I'd like you to get started in the chat box because many of you that have attended before will know I like these sessions to be very interactive, engaging, and I'd like it to be enjoyable as well as imparting some knowledge to you. So maybe while I'm just going through some of the housekeeping, if you could just start adding into the chat box why you've come here today. So just a few of the housekeeping issues to cover. So Crowdcast, those of you who haven't joined a Crowdcast webinar before, you'll see at the bottom of your screen on the right, you have the chat box. So I'm just saying hello. And you are very welcome. So that shows you just where the chat box is. You'll see at the bottom of your screen, you'll see that the participants and those people attending. I'm not running any polls today, so we won't be using that. If you have any questions as we're going through the session, please feel free to put those in Ask a Question. When the chat gets active, sometimes it's easy to miss some of those questions, so I don't want to do that. You'll see down at the bottom of your screen, you've got book a 30-minute complimentary call. For those of you that perhaps like what you hear or are interested in discussing your own workplace situation, please feel free to use this button. It will enable you to book an appointment through an online diary system with me for that 30-minute call. So feel free to do that if you wish. Those of you who are in social media and like to keep people up to speed with what you're up to, you can take a 15-second clip moment from the webinar and share that on social media. Okay, so a little bit about me and who I am and what I do. So as I said earlier, my name is Julie Allen of Julie Allen Consulting. I've been a business improvement specialist for over 20 years. And my current services at the moment are about helping to improve psychological flexibility of individuals. I do that using the ACT matrix. I'm a certified ACT matrix facilitator and an ACT trainer. ACT standing for acceptance, commitment and training. I also help create psychologically safe workplaces. Some of that will come into what we're going to talk about this morning. And I do that using the pro-social matrix, and I'm a certified pro-social matrix facilitator. I also help individuals develop their emotional intelligence. Some of that, I do that using an analysis tool, first of all, using the Thomas International TQ. And then I help develop that emotional intelligence using the ACT matrix. There are other behavioural tools that I use as well, but for many years I have helped organisations with strategic planning, looking at the organisation purpose and values, and that's very much connected again to what we're talking about today. So I'm hoping you're not shy, those of you that have joined us, and please feel free, as I say, please use the chat box. I love to hear why you are attending today. Why are you here? What is it you'd like to find out? Because I'd just love to know that, and I'd love to try to tailor the session in relation to that. And while I'm giving you again a little bit of time to do that, what I'm going to do is just to discuss the areas that I'm going to cover. So the session is about how to avoid burnout in the workplace. And so really we have to talk about, first of all, what is burnout and what are the factors related to it? So how is burnout caused? What is contributing to burnout and how to overcome burnout? And really, the reason that I'm here today talking about this is that I have found this has become quite a topical issue with clients. So I am finding teams or individuals feeling burnt out because possibly what has happened in the last 12 to 14 months. But it's more than that. And again, I'll be able to share some of the statistics with you around that. Burnout isn't something new. It's not something that's just occurred in the last 12 to 14 months. But it perhaps the pressure that everybody has been under has raised the levels of burnout within the workplace. So I think we need to take a step back today. That's what I'd like to do, and look at what's going on and how we can overcome that. Okay, so let me start with what burnout is. So burnout was declared as an occupational phenomenon by the World Health Organization, who we all know about now. And they defined burnout as a syndrome conceptualized as resulting from chronic workplace stress that has not been successfully managed. So the key thing there is resulting from chronic workplace stress that has not been successfully managed. So burnout comes as a result of not feeling a little bit stressed, but chronic stress in the workplace, and that it has not been successfully managed. As I go through the 60-minute webinar, what I will be doing is sharing some research with you, both some research that's been conducted by Gallup, who we all know in terms of research, and also the Chartered Institute of Personnel and Development, the CIPD. I'll be sharing some of their research today as well. So that's the definition of what burnout is. And also then they define the 3 dimensions of employee burnout. So how that might manifest itself will be feelings of energy depletion or exhaustion, increased mental distance from one's job, or feelings of negativism, cynicism, and related to one's job. Those feelings are related to one's job. And then reduced professional efficacy. So, that's about the ability to produce those desired results. And so those are the 3 dimensions that the World Health Organization relate to burnout. So what, I suppose, what are the benefits of avoiding burnout? Because some of you may say, well, look, burnout's going to occur. It's not really my responsibility. But burnout in terms of the workplace, in terms of organizations and the bottom line, burnout really is something that you want to be considering, to be putting a spotlight on, and to be looking at how you can avoid it. So first of all, in terms of the benefits of avoiding burnout, well, we all know that under health and safety legislation, you are responsible for an individual's health, safety, and welfare. And so stress will fall under the welfare element of it. And what you want to do is to avoid some litigation. Put that first and foremost, because sometimes that's what matters to organisations. For me, what really matters is the human aspect of this. And so if we consider the human aspect then in terms of avoiding burnout, what we will find is that if we avoid burnout in organisations, we've got improved individual and organisational health. Some research that Gallup conducted in terms of burnout is that those people who experience burnout are 23% more likely to end up in the emergency department. They are 63% more likely to take a sick day. So what you're going to get there is reduced absence in organisations and then a decrease in individual well-being should you not be considering the impact of burnout in your workplace. Also, Gallup identified that those who experience burnout are 2.6, so let's say 2.5 times more likely to look for another job. So this is also going to impact on your engagement and loyalty levels in the organisation. And also, people who experience burnout are 13% less confident in their performance. Because if you think about that definition of what burnout is it's about the chronic levels of stress that haven't been managed. And that can create some insecurities in an individual and the lack of confidence in them to be able to do the job. This is something that we do need to consider. It isn't going to impact on your bottom line. My guess is those of you that have joined us today, and I'm just checking the list of those that have joined us. Some of you are familiar to me in terms of the names. So you are here because this is something that you're interested in. So I am preaching to the converted. Again, you're quiet on the chat box this morning. So, have you experienced burnout? Do you think people in your organization could be experiencing burnout? Again, I'd love to hear from you in the chat box. So, what are the causes, the top 5 causes of burnout in the workplace? And I think these are interesting. The Gallup these top 5 reasons are coming from the Gallup research. And first of all is unfair treatment at work. So people will be feeling burnout when they are experiencing unfair treatment at work. Those people then who are experiencing burnout will be 2.5 times more likely to experience burnout when their workload is unmanaged. 2.3 times more likely to experience burnout when they have experienced unfair treatment at work. Also then unclear communications from managers is another one that can cause difficulties and frustrations for individuals, increasing the stress levels. The lack of manager support. So 70% less likely to experience burnout when they have manager support. And again, when there is unreasonable time pressure on individuals, they'll experience burnout. But again, with reasonable time pressure, they are 70% less likely to experience burnout. So I think those top 5 causes are ones that will perhaps cause you to analyze what is going on in your workplace. Because again, what is the common factor here in these top 5 causes? Again, love to hear from you in the chat box. Please don't be shy. What are you seeing in common in those top 5 causes? I'm going to give you a couple of minutes just to get engaged in the chat box. Even let me know that you're hearing me, and even just saying hello in the chat box even would be good. Just unusual for me to be 15 minutes in and for the chat box to be so quiet. So even just confirming that things are working would be great. Great. Hi, Connor. Great to hear from you. Yes, audio, etc., all working well. Thank you, Connor, for that. So really, we have a little bit of a shire group today, but that will not stop me imparting the knowledge to you. So we'll talk about that later in terms of what's showing up. Adele, hi. Lovely to hear from you. Yes, there's a lot of uncertainty from the pandemic, and the uncertainty can be causing the stress. But the question for you in terms of the workplace is, what are you doing about it? Again, we may be thinking that there are external factors causing the burnout, but you as employers do have a responsibility. I say you as employers, again, some of you may be leaders in organizations, so there are responsibilities that come with that. So one of what I'm trying to get at here is, what's the common theme running through these top 5 causes? And that is, they all relate to managers. And so if I look at some research from the Chartered Institute of Personnel and Development, stress really is one of the top causes of both long-term and short-term absence. And yesterday, CIPD released their 2021 Health and Wellbeing at Work report. And what we find here is a similar picture year on year. And that is 59% of stress is coming from workloads and the volume of work, 32% management style, 31 work-related demands or challenges, and then 25% other non-work-related relationship or family matters. One thing that the CEO and chairman of Gallup would say is that your manager has more impact on your health than your doctor. So, I'd like you to take a moment just to think about the responsibilities that you might have as a leader. And Connor, great, thank you. I personally felt quite burnt out over the last year. So I'm here to find helpful ways to deal with it. So great. As recovery and prevention in the future. Connor, great. Thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate you, first of all, taking the time to include that in the chat box, but that takes a little bit of courage to do that also. I think that's the key thing with all of this as well, because we will talk about, you may not know that this is occurring even in the workplace, because you may have fears of saying that out loud in the organisation because of the impact that might have. So you as leaders in the organisation, if that's the role that you fulfill, you are impacting on people's lives on a daily basis, and you hope that to be a positive one. And that's where I'm going to talk about what you can do as an individual and what you can do as a group within the workplace. So what you'll see is commonalities clearly there between the Gallup research and the CIPD research is what I'm trying to show here. In terms of Gallup, they identify 5 elements of well-being. So what I'm going to start over on the right-hand side, first of all, with the social. So they say having supportive relationships and love in your life. So these are the things that you will need to be well. And that's both the physical and the mental well-being. So it is about you thinking about, we've been talking about over the last year, the impact of loneliness. They talk about now, loneliness has as much impact on an individual's health as smoking 15 cigarettes. So I'd like you to think about your own social connections, the social connections even within the team, within the workplace, because those are all things that are going to contribute to your well-being. that becomes much more difficult in the remote working world that you may be living in. Financial is managing your economic life to reduce stress and increase security. So I'm going to touch on that shortly, but we need to think about ways in which you can manage that. People have been under stress because they've perhaps been on furlough or they have been made redundant, and therefore the financial pressures have been really great. Community is liking where you live, feeling safe and having pride in your community. Well, we know that the housing market over the last year has increased in terms of people moving home, because realising that home and your outdoor space is really important. So where there were niggles, people have looked at that home space and what's important. And I think for many as well, thinking about now home working. Many of you based in Northern Ireland that are perhaps either watching this on recording or here today, programme last week about people who have moved back to rural areas where they grew up in because they wanted to live a different life, and we're now able to do that because remote working didn't seem as if it was possible 18 months ago, but now it's very possible. So physical then as well is having good health and enough energy to get things done daily. Now, when we talk about health and well-being in the workplace, it's the physical that people are going to spend more time talking about. They're going to talk about diet, and they're going to talk about fitness, and they're maybe going to talk about fruit baskets. But really that is only one element out of the 5 in Gallup's model of well-being. And the 5th there you'll see is career, liking what you do each day and being motivated to achieve your goals. So as a leader as well, in terms of career, you've got to be thinking about, am I enabling people to bring their best selves to work? Am I enabling people to like what they do each and every day? And are they motivated to achieve goals? Or is what we are doing as a team, is it demotivating people? The conversations that we're having or not having, for example, what impact is that having on well-being? So those of you that have felt burnt out, and that perhaps you feel that your team might be feeling burnt out, I'd like you to think about, what might be causing that based on some of what I have discussed so far. Just making a note of where is that coming from, because that will help us moving forward. So some simple things here to avoid burnout. And one of the first things is measuring well-being of the team. Recently, I have been clearly working with organisations on resilience in groups. And what I can do at the beginning of those sessions is to measure the general well-being of the team. You can do that using the General Health Questionnaire or the Warwick Edinburgh Wellbeing Scale. Those are two tools that you could use to measure the well-being of your team. That will highlight whether individuals have serious mental well-being issues, for example. But doing that in the workplace, you've got to be very careful. I do it from if you want a research perspective, of doing a pre and a post evaluation to measure the benefits of the programme. But that's, measuring the well-being of the team if the team are willing to engage in that. Identifying the causes of stress, because we know burnout comes from chronic workplace stress that has not been successfully managed. So what you're going to need to do is to identify the causes of stress in the workplace, the causes of stress for those individuals working within your team. Asking the questions and really listening to what people have to say. Providing training on resilience and stress management. Also encouraging the use of employee assistance programs. So many of you here today may have a employee assistance program. The take up of it may be fairly poor. And some people will not take that up because of fear of the stigma, fear of you as an employer maybe knowing and finding out. maybe not being able to overcome the mental obstacle of taking up that employee assistance program, because people see that perhaps to be counselling. What I've been doing as well with employers is to work with individuals from a coaching perspective to help with well-being. And people find that beneficial. And some people will tell me that they wouldn't have taken up counselling, but more than happy to take up coaching. If we consider the top 5 causes of burnout in the workplace, then leadership development, you might say, should be at the top of this list. So developing leaders, developing their emotional intelligence, developing their skills to be able to have meaningful conversations with their employees. Back to the psychological safety. Ensuring that managers create spaces where people feel it is okay to say how they feel without fear of reprisal. That people feel it is okay to come to work and to be themselves, and also to be able to challenge without fear of reprisal or being humiliated and laughed at. Also, you may find that you could provide financial well-being support. In Northern Ireland, we do have a social enterprise here called Kith and Kin. I know some of you attending here today may also be involved in providing some financial well-being support. So if you do, please feel free to include that in the chat box as well. It's good to be able to share resources. And also, if we think about the Gallup model, then organising social activities, even remotely, is paramount. One of the things that we know that certainly the younger members of the team have really been missing is those social activities, being able to go out with each other for drinks after work, being able to go to the cinema or the theatre, and there's lots of us have missed out on that. So organising some of those events that may have occurred outside of work is to organise those even now remotely. There are many, many more things that we could do to avoid burnout. And so what I'm going to do is discuss those using a model that some of you will have frequently seen me describe. But today I will be using it in the context of avoiding burnout. So that is, I mentioned earlier in terms of what I do, is the ACT matrix. ACT stands for Acceptance, Commitment, Training or Therapy. So ACT is a psychological behavioural tool, but the ACT matrix is a simple tool developed by Dr. Kevin Polk, a clinical psychologist, to enable everybody to use ACT in a way that makes sense, that's easy to understand, and to help you live a rich, meaningful, fulfilled life. And if you're living a rich, meaningful, and fulfilled life, you'll not be experiencing burnout. So what I'd like to do now is to start at the top of the matrix here with the 5 senses experiencing. So this is the experiencing line. At the top, I've said the 5 senses experience. So those are things that you would touch, taste, hear, touch, taste, smell, even here in the world. Those are the things that you will be doing. So when you are having interactions with people, you are seeing and you are hearing. And when you see and you hear with those experiences in the external world, they then flow through you and they trigger thoughts, feelings, memories, sensations, and urges. And you then start to experience in the internal world. So as a result of hearing and seeing me here today, seeing the presentation, that will be triggering thoughts for you about things that might be going on for yourself or for your team. So you're experiencing perhaps now both in the internal world and the external world at the same time. But one of the things with burnout is that when we're experiencing stress for prolonged periods of time, we can start to experience more in the internal world than the external world. So we start to be thinking about our feelings. We are internalizing quite a lot in terms of our self-talk. And so that becomes challenging for us as individuals, and I'll explain why as we start to go through the model. If we look now at the behavioural line in terms of the matrix, those of you that have attended before will see some slight changes in this slide. And that is what we had on the left side of the matrix used to be away, and on the right side of the matrix we had towards. And now Kevin Polk, the creator of the ACT matrix, has changed that to relief and satisfaction. Because what you will know is I have regularly talked about what is it that we do that moves us away from what's important. Those moves are things that give us relief, temporary relief. But those things that we do that help us to move towards what's important, that rich, meaningful, fulfilled life of well-being, will give us satisfaction. And then when we join the two lines together, what we've got, this bit in the middle, is noticing. And where we want to be, being is the mindful part of this, is noticing. Noticing from a non-judgmental and compassionate viewpoint, simply noticing. So I'm asking you to notice now, are you in the internal world or in the external world? Are you now doing both? Because I've asked you a question. And to try to do that noticing without judgment. Because really, from a very early age, we have been trained to make judgments. So your parents will have, you touch something hot. No, that's bad. So we've learned language as humans, the good and the bad and the positive and the negative. And when we use the ACT matrix, we do not use any of that language. Because emotions and feelings aren't bad and they're not good. They're either wanted or unwanted in a given context. So this is where now we're going to now walk through the ACT matrix from the viewpoint, the context of avoiding burnout in the workplace. So the one thing I'd like you to know, for those of you that are attending for the first time, is the ACT matrix is looking at the context or the perspective from an individual perspective. That is you as an individual. So the ACT matrix looks at me. So when we start always in the ACT matrix with the bottom right. And the question here in the bottom right is, who and what is important to you in terms of avoiding burnout in the workplace? So this is where I will help to get us started. But again, I'd like you not to be shy and to use the chat box. So I'm just giving you a few moments to get organised, and it takes a few moments to type. So who's important to you in terms of avoiding burnout for you? So, avoiding burnout in the workplace, because burnout is a workplace situation. So you as individuals, in terms of avoiding burnout, what might be supportive to you? What might be important is supportive. You are in a supportive environment. You've got a supportive leader. You perhaps as a leader are supportive. What's important here, if you think about what I've just described with the ACT matrix, is self-awareness is going to be crucial in terms of avoiding burnout, because you're going to notice things showing up. And I'll describe that in the bottom left in a moment. My guess is you're here in terms of avoiding burnout because health is important to you. Also, if I think about some things that people have talked to me about over recent months, about what may be causing some of the stress and the frustration, maybe a lack of trust. So trust is something that's important. Respect in the workplace, and being approachable. If you're one of the leaders in the organization, that you believe you're approachable. Fulfillment may be one of those things as well that you may feel is important, and maybe career progression. So Please feel free to use the chat box to tell me what's important to you. Now, who's important to you will be yourself. Normally doesn't come first. So I'm putting it first because you're important. And in terms of avoiding burnout in the workplace, we need to consider I am important. It may be your colleagues. It may be your line manager. And also your family and friends. Because they are important. We need those social interactions. We need to feel loved. That's all part of well-being. And so those are the people that are important to you, and these are the things that some examples of what might be important to you. Those are things that you're saying in the internal world. Okay, that's why those are there. Now what I want to do is just come to the next question within the matrix, and that is, what unwanted stuff shows up inside that you want to move away from when you are perhaps experiencing burnout, or you're wanting to avoid burnout? What are some of the feelings that you may be experiencing? And again, I'm going to get started with this one. So if we've used the word stress, something that you may be feeling, or if you're going to experience burnout, you will absolutely have experienced stress, and that stress you will have been experiencing for some time. So exhaustion is something that you might be experiencing. Fatigue. You may be experiencing headaches and feel nauseous and have a backache. You may feel demotivated. You may feel demoralized. You may be feeling empty. Again, don't be shy in terms of sharing, because my experience of all of this is the unwanted stuff that you are feeling, those emotions, I'm going to guess that others here are also feeling that. I am simply describing here my experience of working with people who have felt burnt out. And so let's put burnt out, that because that may be something that you think you're feeling as a physical feeling. Physical, I mean in terms of the sensations. Feeling is an internal thing. You may feel irritated, and you may be feeling angry. Others will tell me that they're feeling frustrated with what's going on in the organization, how it's operating, how people are interacting with each other, and feeling that there may be some self-talk around my contribution isn't valued, and thinking of changing jobs. Okay. So I'm just in italics here. I'm just putting the difference here in a thought. So those of you that are maybe a little bit shy this morning, please feel free to draw this matrix on the page in front of you and jot down what internal unwanted stuff is showing up for you. So what's showing up for you right now today? How are you feeling? Do you know how you're feeling? Because this is the bit around self-awareness in terms of what's important. If you as an individual want to avoid burnout, you need to develop that sense of awareness. Some of us, and again, it may be how we've simply been brought up, have trained ourselves not to feel, not to experience. We're suppressing those feelings really isn't good for us in terms of experiencing burnout. Because my experience, again, of working with individuals who've been feeling stressed, if you avoid it, And if you pretend it's not there, then it can potentially come back and bite you. So, okay, what we're going to do then is to think about here what the next question up here is, okay, so what do I do to get rid of the unwanted stuff? So thinking about what you might do to get rid of the unwanted stuff. The unwanted stuff being the internal thoughts, feelings, and emotions. So when those show up, what do you do? What would I see or hear you doing in the external world when you're feeling stressed or exhausted or fatigued? So we may be avoiding people. You may, for example, be absent from work because you simply can't face it. Okay, so avoiding people and absent from work, we'll just fix that. And you may also have trouble sleeping. So I would say or hear you having difficulties with your sleep. It would be interrupted. You may be going to bed late, up early, up in the middle of the night, for example. You may shout at others or blame others for your mistakes. Because when we are experiencing burnout, we're experiencing stress for some time, it is very easy to make mistakes. But because of professional pride as well, we'll want to blame those mistakes on other people. So we may vent, or we may stay quiet. Now, in terms of developing psychological safety in workplace, staying quiet is very dangerous. Because if you stay quiet about things that you see or hear or are experiencing, then that could have a detrimental effect on the organization. So that could be other people coming at serious risk of harm. So we talked about avoiding litigation in terms of the benefits of avoiding burnout in the workplace. So if you're seeing people being irritable, so let's put that one down. So irritated. So irritable in terms of how they appear and conduct themselves in the organization. The question they're asking is, why is that happening? Again, showing compassion and also looking at this from a non-judgmental viewpoint. So we may be negative in our language, and that will also be impacting on people. And I may also see you not taking breaks. And one of the things I am hearing is working longer hours. So what I'm getting is this is a word I'm going to put here is relentless. Feeling that this is relentless. This is never ending. I am always working. I am not getting the time off that I need. Because really the time off is for recharging. So here then in the top right of the matrix, the question now we're asking is, what could you do as an individual to move towards what is important? So what could you do that would move you towards what is important for you? Again, feel free to use the chat box. Don't be shy. But again, I will help get us started. So what I'm going to say is what you could do is you could personally organize social contact with colleagues. We know from the Gallup research that that is one of the important things in terms of the well-being, the need for social contact. So phoning people, organising team or Zoom conversations just to chat, because those are the social interactions on a daily basis that you are missing if you're working remotely. And for many of you, you've perhaps decided to continue working remotely. So organising those social contacts with colleagues, social conversations. One thing I would also suggest is that you exercise. So what we know from research is that when the fight or flight response is initiated, you will release adrenaline and cortisol. Those are, from a biological perspective and an evolutionary perspective, those are the hormones that are required for us to fight or flight. Flight in terms of having more energy to be able to run. So that's really good. But actually we're not running any more away from the danger, because we're seeing danger all around us when we are in the workplace remotely now. And that may be the one thing that I didn't put actually down the bottom left is security in terms of job. So exercise, any form of aerobic activity you will need when you are feeling stressed to burn off the effects of cortisol and adrenaline. Otherwise, what you're going to find is those are not going to be used up and they're going to be dumped. So you'll find yourself putting on weight if you're stressed over a prolonged period of time, not necessarily because of your diet, but because of the adrenaline and the cortisol. So you're going to need that exercise. And some of the other things that you're going to need to do is take breaks and set work boundaries. So when I'm at work, I'm at work, and when I'm not, I'm not. So taking regular breaks, if you're leaders in an organization, then you know what you want to be doing in this is role modeling behavior. If you're not taking breaks, then your colleagues won't either. If you're sending emails to your team or to colleagues after hours, then it starts to become perhaps an expectation. People can say that in a competitive way. So because they're working at night, that means I've got to show that I'm also doing it. Otherwise, that might impact on my job security. So another one we could add in here is insecurity, is feeling insecure. Let's just try and fit all of that in. Great. Okay, so what are some of the other things? Sorry, I see Adele. Manage your time better in the workplace. Absolutely. So manage time better. Thank you for sharing, Adele. Don't be afraid to add anything else into the chat box. So manage your time better is so that the good time management. Perhaps what you need there is the development of that skill. So it might be attending training in areas that you as an individual feel that you fall short in. It may also be thinking about focusing on your strengths, because again, what Gallup will say in their research is when organizations and when individuals focus on their strengths, then they're much more productive and confident. So focusing on the strengths. You as an individual as well, I'd like you to encourage you to take up well-being benefits. So I mentioned earlier the employee assistance programs. You may have reduced rates to apps in terms of well-being. I'd really encourage you to investigate those and to take those up. Because one of the things that we have that's important, and I'm just going to highlight that now, is you. You are important. And so you need to take responsibility for your health and look at what is available to me. It might be also about have well-being conversations with the team is back in terms of psychological safety, is having conversations with the team, making it okay to have conversations about feelings rather than that be something that just you're a wuss if you discuss. That's probably a conversation that we might use in Northern Ireland. So having those well-being conversations with the team and in one-to-ones if you're one of the leaders. And also is making sure your work is purposeful. If you have control over that, or if you don't, talk to your line manager then as well. And one thing as well for you is to encourage teamwork, working together on tasks, because that's the element that you're missing working remotely. So here are some examples that we have in terms of some things that you could do in terms of you as an individual, in terms of your own well-being, or those may be things that you as an individual could be doing if you're the leader in terms of your team's well-being. One of the things that I'm also going to add, maybe it's just a few more here, is back to the self-awareness, is to notice. And I'm going to say notice using the ACT matrix. So is to develop your self-awareness, develop your noticing using the ACT matrix. Is trying to do that. If you don't do it on a daily basis, is using it on a weekly basis. And it's also about seeking input. A lot of people I've been talking to recently around well-being and feeling burnt out is feeling really that their opinions don't count. So seek input and listen to opinions and act if necessary. Those are things that are going to make a difference to you as an individual and also to the individual. If you've got happy employees, then life for you as a leader will be much easier. Your job will become easier. Performance will improve. Satisfaction and loyalty will improve as well. And to ACT matrix, just before I move on, is about you as the individual. What we have here then is the pro-social matrix, and that is where we move from an individual to a we. So this is about avoiding burnout in the workplace from a team perspective. So again, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to include here some examples of what might go in here, just very briefly to let you see how it works. So what might be important to the team in this this issue may be work-life balance. We may find that they want their opinions count. They may also want to challenge and to feel challenged. They also want job security. They want health, maybe something the team feel is important. Also, we talked about yourselves feeling trusted and respected. The team may also feel that too. An inclusive environment, the growth, development may be also important. Understanding may be something that they also feel that's important, and collaboration are just simply some examples that the team might find. Sorry, I'll just fix that. Understanding. Okay, so some examples here of what might be important to the team. Moving over here into the bottom left, then using this as a we say, okay, so what might be showing up for individuals? All of those things that we also talked about. So dread going to work. Feeling irritated with colleagues, frustrated, depressed, stressed, under pressure, sad, lonely. Again, some examples of what might be showing up for the individuals. Rephrase. Not for individuals. These may be things that are showing up within the team, because we're now looking at this from a we perspective. So, what actions or behaviours might we see or hear that the team members do to get rid of the unwanted stuff that's showing up? So we may see team members being tearful. We may hear negative attitudes. Again, most people want to come to work and do a good job every day. So it's just thinking about, why are these things showing up? So they may have you may perceive they have little interest in work. They may be avoiding you, perhaps as their line manager. They may, again, be also working longer hours. They may, down in the bottom left, actually think that you have set unreasonable deadlines or workload. Remember, looking at the CIPD research and the Gallup research, these are things that are often experienced. So we need to keep that in mind. And they may feel that there is a lack of commitment to them. Okay, so that's a feeling. I've just highlighted the thoughts in italics. And again, maybe over here in the top right, the question then is, what can we do as a team that would move us towards what is important? So we could have social activities as a team, look out for each other, participate in well-being conversations. We could, I mentioned earlier that the financial well-being support. That should be as a team. Okay, and so participate in team, and so scheduling regular team meetings, everyone listening and respecting opinions. Again, maybe some examples in terms of the team. But if we think about it, back to the Gallup research and the CIPD research, is a lot of stress in organizations comes from managers. And what we know is people don't leave organizations, they leave managers. So the whole, what can we do is leadership development. We could put development on the agenda, develop a well-being committee. So these are just some examples of things that you could do. And one of the things, again, that I didn't highlight, I'm just going to do it now, that I didn't do with the ACT matrix. So what we're saying here is, when this stuff shows up in the bottom left of the matrix, these are things that we will do to get rid of that. Unfortunately, what will also happen is, I'm just losing my mouse here for a moment. Let's just get it back. Let's see. Okay, so what will happen here is, when we experience in the external world, then these feelings can show up. Because the other one then, maybe when we're coming back down, is we feel a sense of guilt. Guilt maybe then for not working longer hours, or for to have worked longer hours and not to have spent time with the family because they were important. So we find ourselves ping-ponging back and forth, and that's where we can get into this vicious cycle of not managing the stress and ending up with burnout. Whereas what we want to focus on in terms of avoiding burnout, either as an individual or as a collective group, is to focus on the right side of the matrix. What is important to me? So considering here, what is important to us with the pro-social, me as an individual in ACT, these things showing up, but coming here and doing what matters. That is what we call the psychological safety. And psychological flexibility is to be able to do those things. We've come up to 11 o'clock, so very briefly before we finish is the next webinar, May's webinar, will be how to manage and better motivate for better performance. That's on the 13th of May at 10 a.m. Again, that will be on Crowdcast. So for those of you that have enjoyed what you've heard, learned something, would like to continue to learn more, and would like to attend the monthly webinars, please feel free to follow me on either LinkedIn, on Twitter, or follow on Crowdcast. Thank you, Connor. Appreciate your comments. Very kind of you. So you can follow me on Crowdcast, which means you'll be updated with those webinars that I'm running. The fact that you have joined today, you've given me permission to use your details. So you will now be on my distribution list and you will receive those regular emails. If you'd like to get in touch and discuss your own either personal or group situation at work, please feel free to use the book a 30-minute complimentary call at the bottom of your screen. Thank you, Adele. Adele, you know the matrix. I'm so pleased to hear that you love it. I love it too. As you well know, I have been using it for years, and I really do believe that it has changed my life. Because the focus for all of us using the ACT matrix is what is important. When we live a rich, meaning, fulfilled life, we are living a value-driven life, which is really what the bottom of the bottom right of the matrix is really getting to. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for participating. I hope that you find all of this useful, and I look forward to hearing from you again at a future webinar. Have a great day, stay well, and look for some opportunities to commit to some well-being actions to avoid burnout for yourselves and your team. Thanks. Take care and stay well.